The group walked close together, brushing themselves off from the skirmish. Voyd and Jaida continued to check on Jay, making sure he was alright after the chaos. He just giggled as per standard, unaffected by the violence that had just transpired. His small hands clutched the teddy, snuggling into it happily. Meanwhile, Coco rubbed Ellie's head as she walked. Her brain freeze was still prevalent. Her eyes were slightly glazed over as she processed everything that had happened. "So, is this what all of your adventures are like?" Cece asked as she strode alongside Winona, Francine, Andy, and Meowkery. "Pretty much," Francine replied as she turned to look at Winona and Meowkery specifically. Her gaze lingered on them both. "Are you two okay? You took quite the fall." Winona just rubbed the back of her head, wincing slightly at the contact. We're fine. Honestly, the damn thing's scream hurt more than anything else. My ears are still ringing from the noise." She paused, shaking her head as if trying to dislodge the persistent echo. Andy threw their hands out to the side in a dramatic gesture. "If that was the start, what the hell was waiting for us later on in this nightmare?" Their voice carried a mixture of frustration and genuine concern. They glanced back from where they had come from, half expecting the wardens to come pouring out at any moment. Core sighed, with a heavy sound. He slowed his pace as they entered a large clearing. The trees surrounding them on all sides created a natural boundary within an open space. The canopy above allowed golden shafts of light to pierce through, illuminating patches of purple moss-covered ground. Everyone seemed to relax slightly at the openness, the combined feeling of the forest path finally lifting. He looked up, seeing the gentle snowfall continue. "It's hard to say, my friend," Core stated. His voice was thoughtful, but tinged with a bit of weariness. He caught his breath, his chest rising and falling with every intake. "The stories of the path were a bit vague as to what exactly is to be expected. All we can do is brave it and make it out alive." He looked around, making eye contact with each group member. Everyone took in their surroundings, listening in to the calm breeze that rustled the leaves. It was peaceful but ominous, the kind of quiet that could precede a storm. "Cogson, you know about this stuff, right? What were the wardens saying? What does Nullspark Saw mean?" Coco asked, looking at the old-timer. Cogson scratched his rounded chin, thinking on it. "It's an old saying," he said, looking at the amphibian with wide eyes. "Back in the ancient days of the Sparks, it was considered as a war cry. The most commonly used term for it would be fight, spark, fight," he explained, still continuing to look around himself. "Haven't heard it in years," he added. "Is Jay okay?" Tooney then asked, concerned for his little nephew. Voyd and Jaida nodded. "Crib works well," Voyd said, as a smile crossed his face despite everything. He looked down at his son, who was indeed keeping perfect pace with the group, bouncing gently in his carrier. "He kept perfect pace with us." Jay then went back to chewing on his feet. "Say, how about we just take a second to relax? Enjoy the moment, you know?" Voyd added, rubbing Jay's head gently, causing the baby to coo happily. "Yeah, I think we've earned a bit of a rest," Jaida said. Core nodded slowly, acknowledging the suggestions. "Yeah, that could do us some good," he said, as his voice was filled with a tired edge. They began the rest for the time being. Some sat upon the mossy, snow-tinged ground, leaning against tree trunks. They contemplated their situation, their minds drifting to the wardens they had faced, and what could possibly await them for the rest of the journey. But before anyone could take a second to truly breathe, the sounds of hooves stomping, tires turning against the ground, and loud huffs echoed through the air. Everyone got back up, eyes sharp and steady. "Oh, Beezus, what now?" Coco asked, her voice pitching higher with anxiety as the sound got louder and louder. The hooves grew closer, the turning of wheels adding a mechanical quality to the cacophony. Then, a new sound joined the footfalls. A jovial laugh that seemed to echo across the land. Everyone prepared for another skirmish, when at last, the presence made itself known. Bursting forth from the trees came a massive carriage, long and sturdy, built from silvers and rusting golds. Carrying it were 3 large mechanical horses, the size of them dwarfing Core and Sika entirely. The beasts snorted steam from their nostrils, their joints creaking with each powerful step. Everyone leapt back in shock at the sudden appearance. Voyd stood his ground and summoned his Nova Blade, the weapon materializing in his grip with a hum of energy. Jaida stood protectively over their child, positioning herself between Jay and the massive vehicle, her own powers crackling at her fingertips. The others took a breath, ready for the worst, though every fiber of their being hoped it wouldn't come to violence. The carriage came to a rough stop, nearly tipping over. Its back faced them, with a large door designed with a golden spark crest glinting in the light. Everyone eyed it with tense stares, watching for any sign of movement and any hint of the carriage's intentions. Shifting began to occur within. Loud clanks and grunts accompanied the movement. The carriage swayed from side to side, its entire body groaning under the weight of whatever was in there. When at last, the doors mechanically began to position apart and fold open. Hinges creaked, gears turned, and the large door swung outwards with a theatrical flare. As they did, the group stared in shock upon who was inside. Ho 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 ho! Well, it's been a long while since we've had some souls willing to tackle the path. Count me surprised. The voice came from a massive, overweight spark. He quite literally rolled from the front end of the carriage to sitting in the back open entry, his massive form moving with surprising fluidity despite his size. He was truly gargantuan, a giant synthetic fleshy blob. Despite that, he was unmistakably a spark. His skin was a faded cream white. He wore tons of faded brownish red clothes. A massive kilt covered his chunky legs that dangled over the ledge, the fabric straining against his considerable girth. A large spark crest belly cover rested against his stomach, the symbol prominently displayed below by a belt buckle. He had extra fabric drapes over his arms, another spark crest going over what could be considered as a neck, connecting several plates together. His head wasn't spherical. It was almost melted like an ice cream, oval-shaped, lumped with misshapen yellow eyes, one small, one large and ringed, that were matched by a jovial smile. His eyes seemed to shimmer with warmth and good humor despite their unusual placement. He had golden horns akin to Cogson's, but these were going in an upwards motion instead of a downwards. The right was smaller, the left larger. The large spark being slapped his belly with pride as he gazed gently down at the group, his smile widening. "Who the hell are you?" Voyd asked, his Nova Blade still at the ready, though his stance had relaxed slightly at the being's apparent friendliness. Everyone took in the being's features, trying to process what they were seeing. The sight wasn't like anything they had encountered before. "Are you Spark?" Core asked, his voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and caution. Cogson merely scratched his rounded chin, his eyes studying the newcomer with obvious curiosity. "That's a really big spark," Ellie whispered with her mouth half closed, stating what many were thinking. "I didn't think they could get that big," Toonie said with a concerned stare. "Not a hunk. Definitely not a hunk," Cece whispered. "But he looks friendly." The big spark chuckled, the sound deep and rumbling, rolling out of him like distant thunder. He leaned forwards towards the group, his massive form shifting with an eerie grace. "Why, yes, One of the first to ever be created, but a spark nevertheless. The big guy stated, his pride evident in his tone, before leaning back, spreading his arms wide in a welcoming gesture. Threat not, dear travelers. I am no enemy. In fact, I'm probably the only kind soul that roams this path. The big spark added as he slapped his belly with delight, the action causing ripples to spread across his surface. Who are you? Sika asked, stepping forward slightly. Her curiosity was overcoming her caution. As she did, Joby just eyed the big being from behind her head. The massive spark smiled again, a wide, toothy grin that seemed to take up half of his face. I am the key to the path. You may call me Brumble. The introduction was given with the tone of someone who had delivered it many times before and enjoyed every moment of it. Brumble, everyone thought the name over. A key? What do you mean, a key? Jaida asked, her protective stance relaxing further. She still kept one hand near Jay, but her other hand dropped from its defensive position. Brumble chuckled, the sound rich and warm. Why, a guide, of course. You see, I am what one would consider as a tallyman. I am here to keep track of your progress as you make it through the path of enlightenment. Each milestone, I shall catalog and feed back to our makers. Brumble exclaimed, his excitement evident. Consider me as your breath of fresh air before the next hurdle. The big spark laughed again, the sound echoing through the clearing. The group glanced at one another again, unspoken questions passing between them. Fascinating, Clarkson said, approaching the carriage with cautious steps. Lady Matera never mentioned you before. Brumble waved a dismissive hand, the gesture somehow managing to be both casual but commanding. There are many things she doesn't speak of. My sole purpose is here and only here. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. I am a tool, not a person. That's how these things work. He added, the last part of which with such casual acceptance that it gave everyone a sense of empathy for the big guy. The way he spoke about himself, as a tool, settled oddly in their chests. Yet Brumble himself didn't seem to mind his role, wearing it like a badge of honor rather than a burden. Wait, so if you're a key, could you tell us about what we should expect going forwards? Just for some peace of mind? Andy asked, their hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. They flinched as Meowcry adjusted himself atop their head, the cat's cosmic claws digging in slightly before finding a comfortable position. It would be most appreciated, he added. Brumble chuckled. Why, of course, he said, sitting back in his carriage with a satisfied look. It creaked under his weight, but held steady. The path before you has several sectors before you reach the Tenebris, Brumble began, his tone shifting to something more informative. He gestured around himself at the surrounding forest. Currently, you're on the lower levels, where the dark matter resides most. His expression grew slightly more serious. You've made it through the entry gate, and past the wardens. Brumble went on, his gaze shifting to look behind the group, as if he could see the enemies they had escaped. Be warned, they are stalkers. You will most certainly encounter them time and time again as you traverse on. The warning was given with a head tilt behind the group, emphasizing his point. Ahead of you, there's an old temple factory, once used by Lord Sabrath. It now resides as home for a nasty being known only as the Collector, Brumble mentioned, his voice dropping slightly. Not many who've come here have been seen again beyond that dank old rut. He let the implication hang in the air, heavy and foreboding. The group absorbed this information, their expressions growing more serious with each word. From there, you shall traverse the Temple of Etrix, where you will find the current gate rather higher up in the mountain. Brumble went on, his hands moving as he painted the picture for their journey. Keep an eye out for the mope, however. She'd rather be on her lonesome. The big spark ominously said, "The current you shall traverse is the halfway mark between the light and dark, the forest of Liflora." Brumble went on, his tone lifting slightly. "From there you shall enter the light matter half of this path, the large bridge that allows you to enter the lower chambers of the Tenebris." Tooney sighed with relief at this, his whole body seeming to relax at the prospect of how short it all seemed. "Cool. Should make our lives easier then." Brumble laughed at this, a big, hearty laugh that shook his massive frame. The sound was genuine, without malice, but carried an edge of something Tooney couldn't quite identify. "What?" he asked, his confidence faltering slightly at the reaction. "Oh, naive little pup," Brumble said, shaking his head with an amused expression. "Sure, the dark is strong, but those who wield the light are far stronger," he revealed, leaning forwards. "There you will travel up the Tenebris to reach its peak, facing light matter entities. Once done, you will ascend the steps, and there you shall find the gods." His gaze shifted to Core specifically, lingering on the supposed leader of the group. "I sense you especially seek them out of urgency." Core stepped forwards. "We're on the brink of extinction. Brumble cut him off, raising his massive hand. "No need to explain your desires to me, Mr. Novason. I'm not the goddess here, am I?" Core paused, caught off guard by the interruption. "How do you know my name?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of surprise and suspicion. Brumble just laughed. "A question with no importance nor resolve," he said, waving off the concern. "Come, my carriage is plenty big to hold you all. I shall take you to the factory. Normally, I'd let people walk, but it is rather cold." The big being rolled on his large body to be at the reins of the mechanical horses once more. "Come, come! I have plenty of food to spare. Rest your feet, feel the warmth, and enjoy the ride." A small ramp folded out from the back, extending down to the ground with a soft clunk. Brumble looked back at them expectantly, his golden eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Are you trusting this guy?" Sky asked, crossing her arms. She looked at the others, seeking reassurances or perhaps confirmations of her doubt. "I do! Let's go!" Cece declared, her enthusiasm overriding her caution once more. Without waiting for further discussion, she bounded towards the carriage. Her steps were light and eager as she climbed the ramp. To this, everyone reluctantly followed. One by one, they ascended into the large carriage. The interior was surprisingly spacious, but there were no seats. The group found themselves in awkward spots to settle into, making themselves as comfortable as they could. As they did, the ramp and doors slid back together with a hydraulic hiss, sealing them inside. Then, with a crack of reins, they were off. The mechanical horses broke into motion, their hooves pounding against the ground as the carriage lurched forwards. Through small windows, the group watched the clearing disappear behind them. The journey before them was still unknown, but for now, they had a guide. They had a moment of rest, and they had each other.